The following weekend arrived colder than expected. Heavy gray clouds hung low across the village, and rain tapped steadily against the farmhouse windows since dawn. I woke earlier than usual, unable to sleep properly. Part of me felt nervous in a way I hadn't experienced for years. Not because of Daniel, because of Ethan. Children remember emotional tension differently than adults. They absorb it quietly, then carry confusion for years afterward. I didn't know what version of our family he believed now. Around 10 in the morning, Daniel's SUV finally appeared at the end of the dirt road. Ethan jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped and ran straight toward the porch. "Grandpa!" He nearly knocked me backward, hugging my waist. I laughed despite myself. "Careful there." Daniel stepped out slower, looking uncomfortable again in the muddy surroundings. City shoes weren't made for farms. Ethan immediately started asking questions before either of us could speak. "Can we see the chickens? Can we fish? Can I drive the tractor?" One thing at a time, I answered. Behind him, Daniel carried an overnight bag. He wanted to stay the weekend, he explained cautiously. "If that's all right." I looked at Ethan's hopeful face. "Of course." Daniel nodded gratefully, though tension still lingered between us. Relationships damaged over years don't heal in a single apology. Still, there was effort now. That mattered. Inside the farmhouse, Ethan explored every room like discovering hidden treasure. Children raised in cities find wonder in ordinary rural things. Old clocks, wooden floors, zen on tinzu. While Ethan ran upstairs examining family photographs, Daniel stood awkwardly near the kitchen counter. "This place feels smaller than I remember," he admitted quietly. "That happens when you stop looking at something with childhood eyes." He nodded thoughtfully. Then his gaze landed on an old framed photograph above the fireplace. Eleanor holding 6-year-old Daniel beside our first tractor. I forgot about that picture. I watched his expression carefully. "Your mother loved that day. You insisted on wearing rain boots 3 sizes too big." A faint smile appeared briefly before fading again. "She always made everything feel warm." "Yes," I answered softly. "She did." Mentioning Eleanor still changed the atmosphere between us instantly. Some people continue holding families together long after death simply through memory. Ethan suddenly rushed downstairs carrying an old baseball glove. "Dad, look." Daniel stared at the glove in surprise. "You still have that?" "Of course," I said. "You slept with it for almost a year after your first Little League game." Ethan looked fascinated. "Dad played baseball?" I raised an eyebrow. "Your father used to practice until sunset every evening." Ethan looked at Daniel like hearing secret information. "You never told me that." Daniel shifted awkwardly. Life got busy. There was again the quiet tragedy of adulthood. Busy enough to forget yourself. Later that afternoon, rain finally stopped, so I took Ethan down toward the barn while Daniel followed more slowly behind us. Ethan's excitement over simple things reminded me painfully of Daniel at the same age. The same curiosity, same energy, same bright attention toward everything alive. "Can I feed them?" Ethan asked while chickens crowded near the fence. "Sure." I handed him grain carefully. Daniel leaned against the barn doorway, watching silently. For a moment, I saw longing in his face. Not for wealth, not for success, for simplicity, the kind of peace he abandoned years ago, chasing approval from people who would replace him without hesitation the second his status dropped. While Ethan explored nearby, Daniel walked further inside the barn. His eyes moved slowly across old tools, wooden beams, and dusty shelves. "You kept everything," he murmured. "Mostly." He stopped near a workbench covered with faded notebooks. "What are these?" "Farm records." He opened one carefully. Inside were pages of handwritten calculations dating back decades. Crop costs, machinery repairs, tuition payments. His expression changed suddenly while flipping pages. "You tracked my university expenses?" "I tracked every expense." He continued reading silently. Then his face tightened. "Dad." I already knew what page he reached. "Those are hospital bills, too." His voice dropped lower. "You mortgaged part of the property. Temporary loan. To pay for my final 2 semesters." I stayed quiet. Daniel stared down at the notebook like it physically hurt him. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was your father, not your business partner. His jaw tightened hard. I thought scholarships covered most of it. They covered some. He closed the notebook slowly. Jesus Christ. There's a particular kind of guilt adults feel when they finally understand sacrificing is not dramatic guilt, heavy guilt, the kind that changes how memories live forever. Ethan suddenly ran into the barn, holding a tiny orange kitten in both hands. Grandpa, look, I smiled immediately. Well, seems Daisy had babies again. Ethan laughed while the kitten climbed clumsily across his jacket. Even Daniel smiled, genuinely for the first time in months watching him. Then Ethan looked up innocently. Dad, why don't we live somewhere like this? Silence. Daniel glanced toward me briefly before answering carefully. Because my work's in Chicago. Ethan frowned. But everyone there's angry all the time. I nearly laughed. Children really do notice everything adults hide behind politeness. Daniel forced a small smile. Not everyone. Mom is. That erased the smile immediately. Ethan looked down at the kitten, unaware of how sharp his honesty sounded. She yells a lot lately. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck uncomfortably. Your mother's stressed. Ethan shrugged. Grandpa's not stressed. Daniel looked directly at me after that, and for once neither of us spoke, because we both understood the deeper meaning underneath Ethan's words. Peace cannot exist inside people constantly performing lives they don't truly believe in. That evening, after Ethan fell asleep upstairs exhausted from farm activities, Daniel and I sat alone on the porch drinking coffee while cold wind moved through the fields. Darkness stretched across the farmland quietly. Vanessa almost didn't let him come, Daniel admitted suddenly. Why? She thinks you're turning him against us. I stared ahead calmly. Children naturally move toward people who make them feel accepted. He sighed heavily. Things at home have been bad. Because of the gala? Because of everything. He looked exhausted again. The video. Work pressure. Arguments. I remained silent. Daniel suddenly laughed bitterly. You know the worst part? What? Half the executives criticizing me treat their own parents worse than I treated you. Probably. But they're careful enough not to get exposed publicly. I looked at him evenly. That thought should concern you more than comfort you. He nodded slowly. Yeah. After a long silence, he finally asked the question lingering underneath everything. Can trust come back after something like this? I answered honestly. Not fully. He absorbed that quietly. But respect can, I added, if actions change. Daniel stared out across the dark field for a long time before speaking again. Sometimes I think I built my whole life trying to outrun shame. What shame? Growing up poor. Watching mom die slowly because treatment costs were impossible. Seeing you work yourself into exhaustion every day. His voice tightened. I hated feeling powerless. For the first time, I understood something important. Daniel didn't reject the village because he thought he was superior. He rejected it because it reminded him of pain, poverty, fear, loss. Success became armor against helplessness. The problem was, eventually he started confusing love itself with weakness too. Your mother never felt ashamed of our life, I said quietly. I know, neither did I. Daniel swallowed hard. Maybe I was weaker than both of you. No, Ian Surat. Just lost. Wind rattled softly against the porch railing. Then Daniel asked something unexpected. Did you ever regret sacrificing so much for me? The question deserved honesty. Sometimes, I admitted quietly. He looked wounded instantly, but I continued before he misunderstood. Not because you weren't worth loving. Because I taught you success mattered more than balance. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I pushed you toward achievement constantly. Better schools. Bigger opportunities. More ambition. I looked toward the dark barn. Maybe I forgot to teach you enough about contentment. Daniel sat very still after hearing that. Eventually he whispered, You still blame yourself. Parents always do. He looked away quickly then, blinking harder than necessary. I pretended not to notice. Some moments deserve privacy, even when shared. Upstairs, Ethan suddenly called out,